A while ago, I asked you for your unpopular bookish opinions, and now I am finally reacting to it. It took me a while to make the video, but here we are. On Earth, we're briefly gorgeous is sophomoric, which means pretentious or juvenile. This is a novel written by Ocean Vuong. And it is a poetic and introspective exploration of the protagonist's life as a Vietnamese American man named Little Dog. So I had never heard of this book before. Actually, I'm not really following the trends. Maybe I should, but I'm not really interested. And now that I know what the book is about, I cannot say that it sounds interesting to me, so I'm probably never going to read this. But if you have read it, let me know in the comments if this person is right or wrong. The next one, I didn't like 1984. This is also a novel that I haven't read yet, but it is by George Orwell, and I did read Animal Farm multiple times because this is the first time I didn't like it, and I kind of thought maybe I like it the second time, but I didn't. And so, I don't know, George Orwell has ended up on the bottom of my reading pile, so to speak. I do not intend to pick up his other books in the near future. But speaking of 1984, it's a dystopian novel, and it was published in 1949. And the story follows Winston Smith, a low-ranking member of the party who secretly harbors rebellious thoughts against the oppressive regime. So it's clearly dystopian. Might be interesting. I might pick it up later, but right now I don't have an opinion about this book. The next one, New Adult is Insufferable. Okay, so I must admit that I don't have experience with the genre, but this is what Wikipedia says about the genre. It is a genre fiction with protagonists in the 18 until 29 age bracket. New adult fiction tends to focus on issues such as leaving home, developing sexuality, negotiating education, and career choices. I don't know why this person finds the genre insufferable, and I wish she or he would have explained it, because it's a bit vague, but at least you know which books to avoid. Because New Adult has been a very popular label for books, which makes it easier for you to avoid them because you find it insufferable, so that's great for you. The next one, Sarah J. Maas is massively overrated. And I have to say I agree with this. I have read the first 2 books, I think, in the Throne of Glass when I was a teenager. And I have read, what is it called? Crescent City, because I wanted to give her a proper second chance, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. And I found it horrible, like especially the way that she portrays men. They're so muscular, and the reader has to be reminded of how muscular the love interest is every 5 pages, and it bothers me beyond measure. So I will never again pick up a Sarah J. Maas book. I just don't like it. The next one, some writers fall in love with language to the point of neglecting to tell a great story. Okay, so I think it's all about balance, and it's hard for authors to achieve this harmony between language and story. An author loves language, at least I hope he does. And it's so easy to get lost in beautiful prose. And indeed, this can result in a piece of literature that prioritizes writing style over storytelling. When the prose disrupts the flow of the narrative, it can really pull a reader out of the story and disconnect them. I personally love flowery and beautiful prose, and I think it enhances the story. But of course, the main goal is to tell a story that engages readers, and the prose should enrich the story without overshadowing it. I think it's all about balance, and I think I, as a reader, I need both of them to really love a story. But I think storytelling is more important. Well, telling a good story is more important than having beautiful prose. I 100% get what this person is saying. And in a way, I agree with it, but it's just about finding balance. Next, not liking a classic isn't the reader's fault. It's the writer's. Here I must say I disagree, for I believe it is no one's fault. If I dislike a book, it doesn't necessarily mean that the author didn't do a good job, because everything in literature or in art in general is so subjective. An author cannot possibly write a book that pleases every reader in the world. It is impossible. And so blaming the reader for lack of enjoyment 100% is a bit black and white, I think. And yes, writers bear a significant amount of responsibility to keep their readers engaged. But it's also so important to realize that this is all about preference. The next one. Pride and Prejudice gets far too much attention as being considered Austen's best writing. And I absolutely agree. I can see why the book is so popular, because it has some amazing adaptations I absolutely love. I think the 2005 movie, I can never remember the year, but it's the one with Keira Knightley. I think it's so good. But as a reader, having read all of Austen's novels, Pride and Prejudice is actually one of my least favorite books by her, which is weird because I absolutely love that movie, but I think her other books are way more interesting, and yeah, it's a preference. The next one. Many classics could do with an extra round of editing to cut away the fat. I agree, but I would say it's not only a problem with the classics, it's also with modern literature. I often wonder, while reading a book, where was the editor? Like, for example, we have been talking about Sarah J. Maas. I have read Crescent City, and I thought, my God, is it because she's so popular that she can write such huge books? And it was going on and on about things, and I thought, this is irrelevant, this could have been cut. So it's not only the classics. But yeah, again, this is absolutely subjective too. The next one is also a juicy one. Some beloved classics would make the cut if brought out today. They would not get published. Okay, the publishing industry has undergone so much change over the years, and things that were groundbreaking back then, like in the 1800s, they aren't groundbreaking anymore. Writing styles have changed, pacing has changed, storytelling, so many things have changed. And I think it's hard to compare novels that have been written so many years ago with modern literature. But luckily, many classic works continue to resonate with the readers of today, which is great. The next unpopular opinion. While I do not judge people on what they do with their books, because the books are their personal property and therefore can do what they want with them, however, I cannot bring myself to annotate, underline, highlight my books, because I feel like I am defacing and destroying them. I don't even open a book the entire way at the beginning of the book and wait until I am in the middle of it for fear of cracking the glue in the spine. Silly, no? Anyway, I look forward to your reaction rebuttal video. Have a great weekend. This is such an interesting one because I am the same. I cannot write in my books. I did it this one time with The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is my favorite novel. And I loved it so much. I loved highlighting. I loved writing down in the margins. But that was just a cheap, worn down paperback, and I didn't really mind destroying it. But what I do now is I just journal about what I read. So I keep a separate journal, and whenever I want to write something down, I can just write it down in my journal. You can also keep cards in between the pages. And whenever there's something you want to write down, you can just use one of those cards. You also have this see-through tape that I use for my copy of War and Peace, and you can just write on the tape and it looks like you've been writing on the book, which is also an option if you want to give annotation a try but you don't want to ruin the book. I also feel this struggle with paperbacks and not wanting to destroy the spine. I try to keep my paperbacks in pristine condition. I try not to crack the spine. If it happens, it happens. But I try not to, because I find it prettier to have a row of books with uncracked spines. And I think many people find this silly. But that's okay. We can do with our books whatever we want. If you want to write in them, if you want to crack the spine, that's fine. If you want to keep the spine in pristine condition, that's fine too. I do really recommend to write about what you read because it changes so much and you will remember your books way better than when you don't. But it's okay if you don't want to write in your books. That's totally fine. I would never buy a secondhand book with writing in it. And maybe that's part of why I cannot bring myself to write in my books. The next opinion. Listening to audiobooks is listening to or hearing a story, is not reading a story. I don't get upset when people count it as read, but I know in my mind it was heard and not read. Unless they read the words while listening, then I would consider it read. Stories are a blessing no matter how you consume them though. Okay, so I 100% agree that listening is not reading. Listening is listening and reading is reading. And I really don't know why people get so upset about audiobooks. I think they're great. For example, when I have migraine attacks, I cannot do anything but lie down in the dark. And audiobooks have really been such a savior because I at least can do something. I can listen to great literature. But I will never say I have read a book when I have listened to it. I will always say I have listened to that book. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I also think that when you listen to a book, and this is coming from my own experience, when I listen to a book, it is not as deep as when I read it. I miss a lot of things when I listen. Even when I listen to an audiobook, I cannot do anything else or I will miss so much. And I cannot imagine, I just don't know how people listen to books without missing anything while they are doing other things like cleaning the house or working or whatever. I cannot see how you can multitask while listening to a book. So yeah, that's a mystery to me, especially when they say they pump up the speed. I cannot understand. I cannot do it at all. So whenever I listen to an audiobook, I do nothing else. And I just lie down and try to fall asleep or wait until the headache passes. The next one. Reading is not a race, and it's okay to dwell on one book for months and then read it again and again. Lastly, comic books and graphic novels count too. So if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I try to get the message out there to read more slowly, to read deeper, to appreciate the words, the prose, to reflect on your reading, to journal about it. So I 100% agree with the first statement. The second statement is comic books and graphic novels count too. Of course they count. It's reading. It counts. I am not familiar with the reading comic books. I have never in my life read it. But yeah, maybe one day I will pick one up. The next opinion is a long one. Underlining, highlighting, annotating books is, in my opinion, wrong. Not just that it ruins a book, but I also see no point in it. If I would highlight something, my eyes would go there any next time I would reread the book, and so the possibility that I discover new passages are lessened. With annotations, any reread would be a recall of my first read instead of giving myself the opportunity to have new emotions and new ideas. Why to linger in the past? I don't see the need for signposts in the past. I trust my memory and embrace the fact how memory distorts things with time. That means they become really me. I want to have new memories with every reread and not chase for the old ones. I'm not judging anybody who does the highlighting or annotating, but for me, I don't want it. I don't need it. All right. First of all, I do see the point in underlining and annotating, because it makes the reading active, and I also experience this when I do it. Like I said, I or journal about it on the side, or I use these transparent tabs to write on. So I do see the point because it's interacting with the story in a very active way. And I think it might be a good idea to just try it, not writing in your book, but just do it on the side, and then whenever you reread a book, you can just start all over again. If you want to reread your thoughts on what you have written down, you can always take your journal. But if you don't and you want a new experience, you can just leave that aside. I do get what you mean by this lingering in the past and not seeing new things in the book that you have already read. And that makes so much sense. I never thought of that before. And I think I would have to reread a book that I annotated or that I took notes on to see if this is true for me too. I think it depends. But that's really interesting. The next one. I don't like Harry Potter. I love the movies, just not the books. I also think BookTube subtly encourages materialism. Why buy a book you're only going to read once when you can get it at the library? And I'm a hypocrite for pointing this out, as I buy way too many books. My inner bibliophile is at war with my inner minimalist. I wish I had a system for discerning which books to buy and which books to check out from the library, if that makes sense. Makes 100% sense. First of all, the Harry Potter opinion. Love the movies. I don't like the books. I 100% agree. I like watching the movies from time to time. I don't like the books. I tried reading them. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of readers, adult readers who love the books, they love them because it's nostalgic, because it brings back good memories. And yeah, I cannot help thinking it's because it makes them feel young again and good again. I tried reading them and I just didn't like it. Now, BookTube subtly encourages materialism. I think this is true. Though I buy all of my books secondhand, well, most of them. If I cannot find them secondhand, I of course buy them new. But I really try to find them secondhand and buy them for about €5 or something. And I do use the library, but I do prefer to own the books I read, because I oftentimes take some of them off the shelf and just flip through what I have marked, because I use those sticky tabs and I mark things that I love and things that inspire me. And I just love grabbing a book off the shelf from time to time and just looking back on what I found inspiring. And I cannot do that with a library book. I can tab pages, but then I have to remove them all, and I don't like that process, and I don't like handing back that book. But if you're into classic literature and you don't know whether to buy or to go to the library to read a book, then I have some great advice. What I do is I read the first pages on the Gutenberg project. And this website allows you to read entire books, classic books, for free. Legally. So you can just start reading and see if the story and the writing style resonates with you. And chances are high when you love those first chapters that you will love the book, okay? So then it's kind of safer to buy the book. You can also, of course, go to the library, read a couple of pages and see if it suits you, and then buy it afterwards, or finish the book from the library and then buy your own copy. The next one is, I didn't care for the so-called beautiful prose in Lolita. I thought it was boring. However, I read it years ago and plan to give it a second chance. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I liked reading this book. It was very uncomfortable to read, and I liked the writing style. I love beautiful prose. I'm a sucker for beautiful prose. I admit that. But I can see this is a very difficult book to recommend. You can check out my review on my channel if you're interested in my in-depth opinion. But I, of course, understand that this was not your... Gosh. But I can see why this is not your cup of tea, so you are forgiven. The next one, audiobooks are horrible. This is kind of a harsh opinion, and as I have pointed out previously, I appreciate audiobooks for being there, especially for people who cannot read or for people who are sick and cannot focus on a physical copy. At least we can then get some reading done, listening done. But I do have to say that I will always prefer reading over listening. The next one, I don't like the smell of books. I know so many people do, and nothing wrong with that. It just doesn't do anything for me. I have had no desire to read Pride and Prejudice because I love the 2005 movie so much. I know people love the novel and the BBC miniseries. I had an instant last year where maybe I should just read Pride and Prejudice, but nope, I'm just going to stick with the movie. Okay. That's fine. Just stick with the movie. I personally feel like the movie is better than the book, which doesn't happen a lot. I swear it doesn't happen a lot. But I would encourage you to read some of Austen's other works. And then about your opinion on the smell of books, I am guilty of being this kind of reader who smells books. And I often am the weird young woman in the train who is reading and smelling at the same time. So yeah, I am guilty, but I understand that it doesn't do anything for you. And this was actually a very funny comment. The next one, I hate Wuthering Heights, The Catcher in the Rye, and The Great Gatsby. I found Dracula boring, and I didn't finish Frankenstein. So I have read The Great Gatsby, and I agree, I didn't like it. I have read Wuthering Heights, and after reading it for the first time, I didn't like it. I didn't understand. It was way above my head, and I was also new to the classics. So that might have been part of the problem. But then the second time I've read it, I went all the way. I took notes, I made family trees. I actually made a video about it. So if you're interested in my opinion and following me along that journey, you can check that out. But after reading it a second time, I absolutely get why this is a masterpiece, and I really loved it. Frankenstein, I loved the writing style, but this was also a classic that I have read in the beginning of my getting to know classics, and I am dying to reread it. I know that I loved the prose, but that I found the story a little bit dragging. I have to wait to give you guys an opinion on this because I need to reread it. I really do. And I have this Norton Critical Edition with like annotations, and I'm really excited to get started in this. I've also read Dracula. I don't have it because I took it from the library. I didn't like Dracula, so I think we are on the same page. The Catcher in the Rye I haven't read yet, but something tells me that I shouldn't read it because our opinions seem to be quite similar. The next one, A Tale of Two Cities, is boring. So I have this beautiful edition that I recently acquired from Charles Dickens. My God, I cannot speak. It is so beautiful. I'm excited to read it because I know it has a French setting, and I love French literature. So I'm excited to read it, and I believe you when you say you found it boring. I just hope I will like it. The final opinion is not exactly bookish, but Game of Thrones series are slow, repetitive, and boring. Don't know about the book. Okay, the books, right? There are many books, and he still hasn't finished the last one. I hope for the fans that he really does write the final book in the series. I haven't read them. I would like to get to know this author because he's very popular in the fantasy genre, and I intend to read it. I didn't like the show. I watched season 1 with my husband, and we both didn't like it. I tried 2 times, but I didn't like the show, so I hope that when I pick up the book that I will like it. Thank you so much for sending in your opinions. This was so much fun, and I hope to see you next week.